Engineering Department, and I will be the moderator during this session. So during this session, our guest speaker, Professor Anupam Srivastava, will join us, and I welcome Professor Anupam sir on behalf of all the participants, and will start with his brief introduction. So, sir is currently working as professor and associate dean academic affairs at Middle East College, Sultanate of Oman. He has completed his doctorate from UP Technical University and postgraduate in mechanical engineering machine design from IIT BHU. He has over 30 years of experience in teaching research and industry in the area of material sciences, particularly biomaterials and composite materials, as well as tribology and corrosion studies. Sir has supervised four doctoral and nine candidates of Master in Engineering, Dental Sciences, and Business Administration. Sir has publication in peer-reviewed, reputed, or indexed journals. He is life member of two professional bodies, affiliate members of Chartered Management Institute (CMI), member Unimed Subnetwork Employability, and member of editorial board of three international journals. Sir is also a member of Executive Council and Academic Council of IFTM University. Additionally, he has also been a member of Executive Council of MJP Rohilkhand University, Moradabad. He has completed sponsored research projects having value of approximately 50 lakhs in India under DRDO and AICTE, and Oman as principal co-principal investigator. He is also recipient of 2 years visiting scientist fellowship of University Grants Commission India in the field of biomaterials. Sir, in his current role in the college, has academic leadership role through line management and administration of all engineering departments, Center for Postgraduate Studies, Learning Resources Center, and Student Success Center, and for all matters related to academic affairs of all other academic departments, including development, monitoring, reviews of academic programs. He is also the line manager of Center of Academic Practice, which drives the teaching and learning agenda of the college. He is ex-member Executive Committee of Boards of Trustees of Middle East College, ex-officio, member of College Board, chair of Examination Board, and chair Academic Affairs Committee of Middle East College. He has extensive experience, professional body accreditations, and all professional bodies of UK. He is also an expert in e-learning strategies. So today, Sir will have talks on the topics biomaterials from traditional to novel biomaterials. So I request Sir to join us for the session too. Sir, please, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Suman, and thank you, Dr. Namrata. Very good morning to all test team members present online. It's my honor to be associated with A.K. Garg Engineering College. I know this college from very long time. Many of you would not have even joined A.K. Garg College when it started somewhere around, I think, 1998 or something like that, or 2000, close to 2000, because I was, as you have mentioned, I was in Rohilkhand University, Bareilly, and UP Technical University Association was there. So in that capacity, I had visited. Many of my ex-teachers from IIT BHU have been principal or director of your college. Very well known. So it's nothing new for me to interact with you, and it's a pleasure to speak to such an august audience. I know many of the attendees are from other colleges as well. So I would just start beginning my talk with giving you a brief background of what we are at Middle East College here. Our college is associated with Coventry University, UK. Unlike in India, where there is an affiliation, here there is no term called affiliation. We are independent. We develop our own programs, and that gives us freedom to work for employability. Only thing is, quality assurance is ensured by Coventry University as per Quality Assurance Agency of UK's norms. and final award is given by them as well as can be given by us as well. For having more international exposure, we prefer some degrees to be given awarded by Coventry University, and rest of the degrees we award our own. For that, we have to have those international accreditations, both professional body accreditations as well. So with this brief intro, let me then move to my presentation. Can you all see the presentation? Can you see the presentation?
Uh, Sir, your screen is not visible.
Screen is, I've already shared it. I'll try to share it again. Let
Okay,
me
sir.
go back. Can you see the screen now?
No, sir. Now,
Just,
now,
yeah,
now.
it is showing
Yes,
off now.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now it is visible.
So these are some of the teething problems with online uh, education, and so you must have experienced all this in your
Yes, sir.
last 1.5 years. So
Yes.
moving to my presentation. So just as I was mentioning, I'll take just 2-3 minutes to make a presentation or college.
Grammarly does more than catch errors. With Grammarly, you can find really good.
So that brings us to the presentation now. Uh, let's see what this novel material is all about. But before we go to novel, it's an English term. Novel means something unique, something new. So we have to see what is the area. We all are mechanical engineering, and we know that science and in mechanical engineering area has the foundation of mathematics and science. So what is science? It's a pursuit of knowledge and understanding of natural and social world, which we look at systematically and methodologically to find evidences for what we come out with a solution or as such. Then what is engineering? It's the application of science. So it's a profession in which knowledge of mathematical and natural sciences are gained by study, experience, practice, which is applied with judgment to develop ways to utilize economically and the material and the forces. What does that mean? It means that it is all ever evolving area. What is science today may not be science today. It might change, as we have been seeing the model of atom, the nature of electron, protons, etc. Engineering to that extent is not that ever changing that way. It does evolve in terms of methodology adopted, but transition from one entire phase to another phase doesn't happen. We have been known as human being to engineer the goods and products which is of our use from early humankind to the present day scenario. Comes to the technology. As per the technology is concerned, our mechanical engineering, that is why it's not called mechanical technology. You might have wondered, computer science has all the three areas: computer science, computer engineering, and computer technology. Biosciences have bioscience, bioengineering, and biotechnology. Civil engineering, mechanical engineering, etc., don't have those three separations. So we all have mechanical engineering, to the minimal extent, even mechanical technology, but primarily it is engineering. So what makes us distinct from other disciplines of engineering, particularly the new ones, is that for us, science is as important as for them, but for us, our own skills are important. So if we just know the theory, we are excellent mathematician, modelers, but we don't have the skill, art, then we are failing as engineer. So with this caution, let's move and see what is the material world. So we are all knowing, all of you are teaching, and some of you are quite senior, so I don't have to elaborate on this, but just broadly classifying the materials as metals and non-metals, and then various categories among metals as pure metals, alloys, and in non-metals, inorganic and organic, and then combination of each of them, which makes us to bring it to the current area of novel material, which are specially fashioned or designed materials, composites, is one of the examples of that. So what is the novelty in materials? What is this novel material? Uh, as you all know that materials so important over a period of time since the humankind has stepped on this earth, that the importance of material was felt, and the era of our civilizations have been named on metals. All of us know that the Stone Age, where the material used was the stone. Bronze Age, primarily the bronze uh, quality category of materials was used, and then Iron Age, which really transformed the human civilization. Steels are part of that, but now even that has gone, and the current times where we are living in is the age of silicon. All the electronic devices, etc., solar cells, what all you think of has something to do with silicon. And um, to a certain extent, it is either taken over by polymers or going side by side. So polymer, we can call it a polymer age, silicon age, or dual age of polymer and silicon. So when we see the novel materials, the understanding the structure and composition as well as the properties have led to remarkable progress. What we see in the area of material science, where properties of materials such as strength, density, ratio, corrosion, or heat resistance of material have resulted in variety of new products. Uh, some of you might have experiences personally. Some of you might have heard it from your relatives, neighbors, known people. Orthopedic devices, for example, implant, total hip replacement. Now we can replace entire hip of human body with artificial material. Dental is very common. In fact, India is known for dental implants since ages. Cardiac material, pacemakers, stents, etc. Heat shields, heat shields of all variety, all kinds, including in electronic devices as well as on spaceships. Then some of the health and safety instruments like helmets, some of the games and related. Earlier, the material used for bat of cricket was not that mm, advanced, and that's why to score a century in a 20 over, it was unthinkable. Now people are scoring 100 in one day games. They are scoring 200, 300. So that is all credit goes to these novel materials or the way those materials are shaped. Tennis rackets are also one example of that. So what has happened over a period of time as the material has developed, more and more novelty is being brought in. We see that the strength per unit density has been increasing. So in this current age, in 2000s and beyond, 21st century, for the same weight or same density, the strength has been increasing over here, and it has taken an exponential turn now in the current area with aramids, fibers, carbon fiber composites, etc., which have come in. They are very lightweight, but they pack a huge amount of strength or resilience in them. So, what is fascinating about novel materials is that it has a complex relationship between chemical composition, structures, and properties. The material science does uh, impact all areas of study, sciences study. It is a dynamic, ever evolving. Whatever material is being used today may not be there in tomorrow at all, and that has really fascinated the material science or mechanical engineers, chemical engineers, etc. It has brought in interdisciplinarity in the area. So it is very interdisciplinary in nature. It requires knowledge of physics, chemistry, what is my area as well, biology. So I was a mechanical engineer till I entered into my master's and then later on PhD, where I had to understand a lot of biology, do a lot of biological experiments, as well as along with this mechanical experiments to understand the behavior of material and how they can be processed. So these this not limited there. Even computer engineers have chipped in, and they have brought in some simulation tools where you can predict the behavior of material without ever going to the lab, testing it physically. So it has brought in a lot of challenges as well as lot of opportunities. So all this has led to solution which are posing before the mankind, and they have improved the society's acceptance for these new materials. So development of sustainable sources of energy is one example where the novel materials are being used. We must have heard about the wind turbines, etc., where now very high quality, high power magnets are being used to generate higher amount of electricity than what was earlier generated by windmills of the Netherlands, what we know it as Holland. The semiconductor devices for solar cells as well as for our electronic devices. Murphy's law, you must have heard. So every 2 years, the number of such devices which can be packed in 1 square inch area is doubling, and it is thanks to the development of these semiconductor devices. Metal alloys which have been used in prosthetic devices. Earlier, the bone implants, etc., were very heavy. People after implantation were not able to walk. Now they are as lightweight as the human bone. Polymer matrix controlled drug release systems, where we inject a polymer coated with or injected with drugs which are released with time, very slow. And high efficiency batteries which are coming up. You must have heard about the hybrid cars which are there and electric cars which are coming up. They're all thanks to development of high quality, high efficiency batteries, and for that material is what material scientists are being developing. Carbon composites, so all the spacecrafts, even the aircrafts, etc., launch vehicles, all of them are the beneficiaries of the developments in the area of material science in general, and what we characterize as novel material. Some of the areas I've already mentioned, just to list it out: electrochemistry, different type of electrochemistry related processes have been benefited by development of new materials. Biotechnology, biorefining, chemical and pharmaceutical industry, petrochemical industry, gas capture and utilization. You must have heard about now materials have been developed which can capture the carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide from atmosphere, so that they reduce the impact of carbon emission, which has happened over say hundreds of years. Waste treatment, wastewater and other toxic waste treatment, distillation, purification, energy storage devices, as I was just mentioning, and the biomaterials, which I will be dealing more in detail. So you must have heard about stents, pacemakers. So now novel biomaterials are coming up, which were developed to avoid the clots and biofilm formation on the implant surface. There are materials coming which are biodegradable, so they have full mechanical strength, but once injected or implanted in the human body, with time they behave like a scaffold, and then when the task is over, they get dissolved in the body without having any adverse effect. So body requires load carrying capacity later on when the purpose is not there. So these are some of the areas of novel materials which are in development. Every area, even cutting tools, the various advanced cutting tools have come, fabrication devices have come, all that thanks to these novel materials. So what at an end, if you are asked what is a novel material, novel materials is a material which has better properties, lower cost, or longer life than compared to a similar category of material which was being used earlier. That's the novelty. So anything which you improve upon on existing material can be classified. So it's a broader family of materials, under which you have heard about smart materials, you would have heard about functional materials, shape memory alloys, etc. All that comes under this broader category of normal materials. So coming to the topic of biomaterials, as the name indicates, it's a material which is developed or which is being used as a non-viable material in medical devices which are intended to interact with biological systems for purpose of improving the human health. What does that mean? It means any material which is having some strength and which is to supplement the existing structural or other elements of human body. So medicines which we consume, technically speaking, it doesn't come under the biomaterial, although it goes inside the human body, but it is not intended to supplement any existing organ or other skeletal functions. So that's why the drugs used for medicine are not classified or categorized under biomaterials. It is more to do with mechanical, heat, flow related applications in the human body. So because of that, the non-viable word has been removed now, because non-viable means what without which we can't do anything. So the new definition is that this change has brought because development of tissue engineered scaffolds and hybrid prosthetics have come, in which living cells are combined with non-organic material. So the novelty in the biomaterial, which you will see later, has come in where we implant a material, artificial material, it goes there, and with time, it allows the growth of nervous system, skeletal system, etc. through them. And this material which was injected or implanted behaves as a skeletal system or as a scaffold, as we know when we make a building or when we are casting something. So die cast is used, a die is used, but once the cast is complete, then die is removed. So similarly, these scaffolds are there. Earlier scaffolds had to be removed, but now they are made so close to the human body in terms of characteristics and chemical structure that even if they are retained there, the body accepts it as original. Sometimes dissolves it, sometimes just leaves it there, forgetting that it is not going to harm. So that is how biomaterials have progressed. So finally, what has led to all these developments is the refinement in the definition itself, which is a material intended to interface with the biological system to evaluate, treat, augment, or replace any tissue, organ, or function of the body. So complete liver can be replaced, complete heart is replaced by artificial heart. So the material which is used for that artificial heart is a biomaterial. Or a bone has fractured and a material is just being put there to augment the strength of the bone or support the bone, and it is removed once the bone is healed, is also a biomaterial. So there are non-viable biomaterials and viable biomaterials. How do we classify the biomaterials? Since it is going inside the body, and some of the hints I've given how it behaves with the human system is that they can be biotolerant. That means they're not very close to the physiological conditions of the body. They are not toxic as such, but the body just tolerates them. So implants separated from, in such a case, what happens? The implants, they get separated with the adjacent area. Generally, it is happening in case of bone by a soft tissue layer along the most of the interface. That means it covers an capsule kind of environment where the rest of the human body is not in contact, and it doesn't harm, and therefore osteogenesis happens. Examples of such biomaterials are metallic biomaterials in the category of steels, cobalt, chromium alloys, titanium alloys, etc. So primarily, when we implant a metal inside, a metal or alloy inside the body, it is behaving as a biotolerant environment. It is tolerated by the body. It doesn't have any negative impact, but the body really does not accept it. It just forms a boundary around it, that be there, don't disturb, but I'm not going to accept you. The second is bio-inert. These are the materials which, when they come in contact with blood or the tissues, they don't behave the way biotolerant was behaving. So that means they are allowing some interaction with the human tissues, and they are called contact osteogenesis kind of material. And examples are all the bioceramics, in fact ceramics, titanium based, aluminum based, or zirconium based, alumina, zirconia, or titania, which are generally termed in this TiO2, ZrO2, or L2O3. Al2O3 and ZrO2, as a mechanical engineer, we also know is being very extensively used in mechanical engineering discipline for cutting, abrasive machining, etc. The grinding tool, whichever wheel we use, it is coated with alumina. Titania also is used there. Zirconia is costlier, so it is used, but it's not that extensively used there. It has other good applications in mechanical engineering. So bioceramics as such are bio-inert category of materials which are accepted by the body. The third is bioactive. So as the name indicates, active, that means they are doing something all the time with the body tissue. So that means forming the bonds with the bony tissues, and that is why they are categorized as bonding osteogenesis. So they do form bonds with local tissues and veins, etc. And that means they are going to be very close to the human environment. And example of such this is high temperature sintered hydroxyapatite, HAP. We will go in detail later. And bioglass. This is a category or a family of materials. We'll see later. It is very close to our bone material. And then biodegradable, the last category, which is the most viable and most novel of the category of the materials, because they replace the old part where they were put to support. So if they have been put as a filler material in the bone, sometimes bone has to be cut off because tumor is growing or it has some cancerous growth. So then this biodegradable material is put there, and with time the blood cells, blood capillaries, the nerve cells, etc., all grow, and it becomes an inherent part of the entire human bone. And with time, you cannot recognize where was this material injected. It has been totally absorbed there, allowed the development of bone, and then replace the natural tissue with it. So it is absorbed, released via better metabolic process of the body. Whatever is undesirable part of this type of material is released away from the body, and rest is all absorbed. An example of that is again low temperature sintered hydroxyapatite and tricalcium phosphate. Again, it is the same category, family of material with some small difference in their chemical structure. So when we as mechanical engineers have to support the medical fraternity and we have to develop materials for biomedical uses, what are the criteria which we use for selection? And this criteria is leading us to even novel biomaterials development and synthesis also. So first is we look at the classification of devices by tissue contact, as I was showing, and the duration of contact, how long it has to be there. So if it is a bone fracture, we put the bone plates, etc., which last for 15 days to 2 months, etc., to total hip replacement, which is going to last for lifelong, pacemakers from 10 years to 15 years, and replace stents maybe 10 years, 5 years, 4 years, depending upon how much fat or bad cholesterol is getting accumulated. So we have to remove the stent again and put another one, and so on. The second consideration is the testing. So what kind of behavior this material is showing with the body. So whether it is behaving tolerant, active, biodegradable, etc. What is the level of release of material due to corrosion? As you know, body environment is one of the most corrosive environment. It has a particular temperature and pH value, and that is not good for material if it is put inside, and so on. Then there are certain standards which are recommended to the mechanical engineers while fabricating and testing the material, and then during implantation as well. And the finally is that we consider the selection based on whether commonly available, what are the use they can provide us, and so on. So classification of devices by tissue contact and duration of contact. So tissue contacts are surface contacts. As you know, when we have fever and we are taking temperature, there are non-contact types of thermometers and contact types of thermometer. The non-contact type use those heat transfer theories, whereas contact types are using the traditional, say, mercury, which gets which moves with increase or decrease in temperature. So epidermal, muscular membranes, and compromised surfaces. So mucosal membranes are the membranes which are at the very lower side of the upper epidermis of the skin. So something is touching the skin, something is just under the skin, something which has gone inside the tissue. So this is tissue contact. Then we have some devices and materials used for external communicating devices like blood path, indirect contact, tissue, bone, or dentin linking. So there, you must have heard that if the tooth is broken, so then they implant new tooth, which is artificial tooth. And then some of the implants are going inside the veins, blood veins, blood vessels, which are in contact with circulating blood. Stent, all of us know, is one example of that. Then deep inside, when they are implanted near the soft tissues, as for example, a pacemaker, and the other one is the bone tissue related implant devices. I've told you, bone plates, etc., or total hip replacement. Even nowadays, the head skull related implants, or jaw implants are coming now, knee implants are coming now, and so on and so forth. Then duration of contact, as I mentioned, there are some material which are required to be there in the body not more than 24 hours. There are some materials which are requiring extended stay, 24 hours, more than 24 hours, up to a month. Then there are material or categories which are required to be there permanently. That means 30 days, more than 30 days, it is treated as permanently. Then comes the type of tissue response to the foreign material. I've already categorized the material. Now I'm categorizing it as a response. So there are materials which are toxic, and immediately body reacts to that. So when it reacts, that means the surrounding tissue is dying. And that is why while selecting, implanting the material, you must have heard that when we give injections for the first time of a category, they just test it a little bit and see the reaction, and only when the body is not reacting, then they inject. Similar is the case of toxicity of implant materials. So once implant has to be implanted, a small area is exposed and that material is made to touch there. And when it doesn't react adversely, then only it is implanted. So in a toxic response of the material, the surrounding tissue dies. The second category is non-toxic, but we categorize actually as biologically inactive. That means a fibrous tissue of variable thickness is developed, which I showed you in bio. The three categories we were showing where encapsulation was happening. Non-toxic or biologically active, interfacial bonds are formed, and non-toxic resourceable, which are dissolved or replace the original tissue or bone where they were implanted to support them. Then there are some testing mechanism. I'm not going to deal in that. As a mechanical engineer, we need to know if we are in the area of material science. Even the material which is not going to be used with human body, even then this biocompatibility test is there, because if we are touching also, there are some material for which our skin is sensitive. So we have to test the sensitization test the irritation, test the intradermal reactivity. What happens if by chance this material gets inside the skin, then what will happen? And then acute toxicity. There are certain material, even only by touching, it can have very adverse toxic reaction. So that also is tested. So these are some biocompatibility tests. And then finally, if it has to be implanted, then we expose a live tissue and then put it there and then see how it does work. It is generally not done with human for the first time. As you know, in vivo testing is done with tissue culture and then with animal, and only passing through those stages, then it is given to the pilot population to see whether how it is working. And finally, if we have to be very, very sure, like if it has to go inside the blood vessel or heart, then it has to be tested for chronic toxicity tests, which is 24 hours to 10% of the time for which this material has to be in the body. And it is put generally in that condition in animals, and particularly those animals which are large, not mouse, dog, sheep, etc. And then only it is recommended for or tested for recommended for testing in human body. Rest of the things are related to that only, but they are categorized in different categories. So I've just listed it. Some of the standard, as I was mentioning, just for your information, it's quite lengthy. So only dealing with ISO standards related to these material test regimes, etc., will take days, if not months, to understand each of those standards. But if you are working in the area or researching in the area, you must be familiar with this, because without doing this test, this material will not pass even the lab trial level. So what are the common biomaterials? We'll go in detail, but one of the most common metallic biomaterial is a metallic material of alloy category, which is 316L stainless steel, which is used for fracture repair, stents, surgical instruments, etc. So all the surgical instruments which the surgeons use for operating are made from this material. Then various other alloys of titanium and vanadium categories, which are used also for bone related purposes, as well as for pacemaker and capsule making. Cobalt chromium category of alloys, same thing, they are used. They have their own advantages and disadvantages in terms of lifespan, toxicity, the corrosion release rate, and the cost. And depending on where it has, what is the main criteria for use, they are selected one among them. And then some of the latest one, nickel titanium alloys, which are used, they are costly but used for specific purposes. And with gold alloys, we all know that we must have heard that earlier tooth had a gold and covering or something. So it is used for restoration, filling the tooth cavity, etc. Silver, same thing. It is antibacterial. We have been told by our elders that if you fill up water in silver vessel, keep it and then drink it, it has some advantages. And actually that was because of antibacterial, and that is why the material which is used in temples, churches, etc., or for any religious ceremony, it is either in silver or it is in copper, because they have antibacterial properties. And some of those latest ones, platinum based, very, very costly. They are used for electric leads in human body. Again, some of the dental restoration material and so on. So coming to metallic biomaterials, why metallic biomaterials were first thought to be used? Because as we know, metals have their own wonderful properties. They are excellent electrical conductors. They have good thermoconductivity, mechanical properties. Many of them have corrosion resistance, and therefore metals were considered to be used as biomaterial. The metals and alloys which are used in the human body are used as a passive devices. That means they're not active. They're not going to replace the human body part. And that is why they have to have a long life for being inside the body, and they should have certain other characteristics, because they're going to generally use for hard tissue replacement and not the soft tissue, and so on. And I've already given the examples of fracture healing aids like bone plates, screws, spinal fixation devices, dental implants, etc. Is it clear? The speed is okay? Can I continue with the speed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Now, I've already covered it, so I'm just skipping it. Now, coming to some of the categories of steels, we all know the most widely used category of stainless steel. As a mechanical engineers, we all know that it is an alloy of iron and carbon primarily, with other alloying elements in minor trace amounts. And there is a particular limit to which carbon should be present to be categorized as steel. Beyond that, it enters into cast iron regime. And in steel also, with that low carbon percentage, even that you have mild steel, high carbon steel, and so on. So the stainless steel which is used for human body are not the stainless steel which we are using for, say, plate or spoon or etc. The vanadium steel was the first one which was considered to be used in human body, because of the properties which vanadium brings into the steel when vanadium is used as an alloying element. And obviously, what is that property which is brought in by vanadium is the corrosion resistance. So it was thought that it will bring corrosion resistance, but when it was implanted, it was found that it doesn't have that level of corrosion resistance, or it is inadequate. It does have the mechanical properties but not the chemical property, particularly the corrosion resistance. So then some modification, novelty was brought in the material. 18.8 type 302. It's a all of you who are dealing with materials, and those who are dealing with stainless steel category of material, you know these nomenclatures, alloying element percentage, etc. it depicts. So 18.8 type 302 is the category of steel which was used, because it has higher strength, it has better corrosion resistance than the vanadium steel. So it served some purpose, it brought in some novelty, but still it was not the best option under the stainless steel category. So then some amount of molybdenum was then added to further increase its corrosion resistance. And from that time, this vanadium steel, or 18.8 type 302 steel, then got its new name, which is 316 stainless steel. And it is quite old, where the carbon percentage was 0.08% to 0.3%, which had brought in some corrosion resistance, more corrosion resistance to the earlier 18.8 type. Still, it needed further novelty, further improvement in properties, and therefore 316L stainless steel was finally developed, which had some more alloying elements. Now, currently, what is in use in market since 1960s is 316L stainless steel, which has carbon percentage only up to 0.03%. Manganese is 2%. Phosphorus is again similar to carbon, and so on. If you see, the highest is chromium, and the next is nickel. So nickel and chromium are dominant alloying elements, whereas molybdenum and manganese are minor alloying elements, and rest all are trace alloying elements. So what is advantage of 316L stainless steel compared to the previous two generations of this steel is that it has quite high mechanical property strength. As you can see, all of you are there, I need not explain. But see one thing, do we, since time is not there, I'm not going to go for question answer session as such now, but just I'm posing a question. Do you think that high strength is good or low strength is good. So here, this 316L stainless steel has approximately 10 times more strength, Young's modulus, than bone, for which it is going to be implanted. So it is going to be implanted to support the bone. And the strength of this material is very, very high, 10 times higher. So what happens then? It happens what we do for the school, our children, or in the colleges when we teach. If we support the student too much, spoon feeding too much, that student gets dependent on the teacher, or that child gets dependent on the parent. Same thing happens in the human body. If the bone gets supported too much, then it forgets to carry the load. And with time, bone resorption happens. Bone starts losing its load carrying capacity because it starts discarding the calcium present in the bone. And as that is why you must be knowing that when we grow, our bones become weak, not only because the metabolism is like that, because our physical activity goes down, so bone doesn't require that much of strength, so it starts discarding. As a result, it gets weaker and weaker. That is why we are suggested to have exercises, physical activity. Otherwise, apart from the other biological reason, physiological reason, even mechanical reason also leads to bones deterioration in quality. And ultimately, you just sit little bit impact, it breaks because it becomes very brittle with time. So as a mechanical engineer, we have to know that it is not always good to provide more strength than what is required. Yes, in a building, you can provide more strength through the reinforcement steels, but then cost is the only problem. Here, cost is not only the problem, it is also the problem of the purpose for which it was implanted. It has made the bone redundant. So the novelty in the materials, when we are bringing it, we have to also remember that it should not give a negative impact for the purpose for which it was used at the first place. Second broader category is titanium alloys. They are being used from quite long time, as it is seen here, 1930s onwards it is being used. They are used because they are lightweight compared to the steels, and they have very good mechanico-chemical properties. So that means mechanical properties are also very good, and chemical properties, particularly the corrosion resistance and biotoxicity, etc., is quite good. And there are variety of categories of titanium alloys. Generally 4 grades are there: unalloyed pure titanium, and then various impurities or alloying elements are added, which are used for all surgical purposes. The amount of oxygen in particular affect the ductility. So if we increase the amount, ductility goes down. If we decrease it, ductility goes up. So depending upon what is the type of application we are going to use, we increase or decrease the amount of oxygen also here, which was not the case in case of 316L stainless steel. And you again see the properties. Again, it is quite high. If you compare with steel, which was 7 density wise, it is quite lightweight. And then if you compare other properties also, you will find that it is more suitable for majority of applications than compared to the other 2 categories. And uses, as I said, are quite varied depending upon which alloying element is being used. Niobium, zirconium, aluminium, chromium, etc. are used, and different categories or families of titanium alloys are prepared to be used as implant material. These are some of the alloying elements, and with that alloying element, the grades are made. And the most common used one is the last one, Ti6 aluminium 4 vanadium alloy. This is more than 90% titanium alloy which is used in current times is of this category, which is in the last column. Mechanical properties, as I was mentioning, again, it has very good mechanical properties, and it depends where it is going to be used. So sometimes this high mechanical property, very high mechanical properties are useful, and sometimes it is not useful. Okay. Just a point that titanium and its alloys have excellent resistance, as I mentioned. Their elastic moduli are approximately half of the stainless steel and therefore create less risk of stress protection in bone. What I was mentioning in 316L stainless steel, that it has higher strength and therefore it actually spoils the bone. Whereas here it has half of stainless steel, so it spoils but spoils lesser. So the novelty in this category is that it is supporting the bone more compared to the stainless steel. And then comes the cobalt chromium category. I'll not go into detail. It has variety, but primarily there are two categories. One is the castable one, and the other one is forged category. And based on whether it is cast or forged, where it is going to be used is decided, because if the shape of that material implant is very, very intricate, then casting is preferred. But if shape is straightforward like bone plate, etc., then it can be forged. As you all know, in mechanical engineering, how do we decide which manufacturing method has to be used? And it is primarily initially used in dentistry, but now is being also used in artificial joints. So total hip replacement, total knee replacement, etc., is being used. And it is being used because it can carry the load. And artificial hip is the main area where most of the load of the human body is being shared, so it is being used even there. And coming back to the corrosion resistance, as I had shown earlier, it has the most or highest corrosion resistance, and the compared to all the three. And even among the cobalt chromium, the two categories, the one which is having nickel in it has higher corrosion resistance, and that's why one of them is not preferred over other. In general, wherever there is a friction or where the two parts are to move, it is not preferred, such as load bearing, the bearing areas, because frictional properties are not very good. Just for your brief look, these are the alloying elements, and based on their alloying elements, the various categories are decided. So if we see the comparison between stainless steel, cobalt chromium, titanium pure and titanium alloy and the bone, you can see the bone yield strength is 30 to 70 gigapascal, whereas all these materials are having 4 times, 5 times, 6 times higher. Modulus of elasticity also is in the same range, tensile strength in the same range, fatigue limit also same range. So which one to be selected among these metallic material, it all depends that where exactly we are going to use it, if that purpose is to be served for long time or a short period. So this is already mentioned. Just to let you know the pH value, and the human body pH value is 7.3. We cannot play with this. If our pH value, temperature we still can manage, but pH value goes up and down, it has catastrophic effect of all the organs in the body. So when when the implants are injected in the body, we have to know that it has not only this pH and the temperature, also body has dissolved gases, and then it should not let the formation of electrolyte cell, etc., electric cell formation, and playing with the protein of the body. So with this problems in general, load bearing problems, corrosion problems, cost, fabrication, etc., that is why it was thought that let us look at some other category of materials, and that was the time when we thought of novelty, further novelty in the biomaterial. Just to give you a glimpse of what happens when a metal is implanted, this is my own research based this thing. This was implanted in a accident case where bone was fractured multiple places. The left side figure shows the bone plate and the screw which was injected or implanted, and the second picture is the screw head, screw hole, and you just see on the screw hole how much corrosion has happened, and this corrosion has happened only in 15 days. And what would have happened to the corrosion product? The corrosion product is more toxic than the parent material, and it would have gone in the surrounding tissues, and it would have created adverse reaction, itching, swelling, and sometimes loosening also. And then it had to be removed. So this was removed by the doctor, and we had investigated what was the cause of removal, why this implant failed in this candidate, or in this patient, was this, that it was for this particular patient, it was not acceptable by the body, and that's why it reacted earlier than in normal other patients. And the right side high magnification, you can see the surface at the top left is the normal surface, and the surface at the bottom corner is the corroded surface, how much corrosion has happened. And it's not a problem, it is not going to affect the mechanical strength of the material, but the corrosion products which have come out have killed the tissue, surrounding tissue, created toxic reactions, swelling in the bone area and the area where it was implanted, that required immediate removal. So this is what happens if we have not carefully tested the material, or tested it one category of person and not tested it across the population of different category, different blood groups, etc. So a lot of more things have to be done other than mechanical. Polymeric material, I will not go in detail. There are huge variety of polymeric material. They are used as such as a bulk material or as a supporting material. They lack, what they lack is mechanical strength, but they also have come packed with some other wonderful properties, because of which they are used in variety of combined application along with metals. Where metal is toxic, they are covering the material because they are quite inert to the environment, or sometimes active also. Methyl methacrylate is one of the things which is used in skull defects and skull surgeries, and bone graft, etc. So what are the areas? As I said, some bulk and some areas where they are supportive. So HEME, polyhydroethyl methacrylate. This is a commonly used material in mechanical engineering area also. It's a very common polymer, and it is used for a lot of device fabrication as well. Plastic, what we call, it is used in such applications. So when it is injected in the body, it is non-absorbable. That means it is not ingested, or it is not eaten away by the body. But if it is porous, it allows growth. So if the pore size is 150 to 300 micrometer, it allows, without any harm, the growth of tissues, growth of cells, growth of nerves, and growth of vascular, the blood carrying capillaries through it. So it can wonderfully work well as a scaffold rather than coming as a main material. High density polyethylene is another example. All this leads to that the metals had a property which is strength, but corrosion was a problem. Polymers had problem of strength, but they were wonderful when it comes to the corrosion. Then we looked at some of the ceramics. Again, ceramics are the, as we all know, they are the oxides, carbides, nitrides, borides, etc. of the transition elements, aluminum, zirconium, titanium, etc. They are inherently brittle in nature. If they are used as a bulk form, they have low electrical conductivity, low heat conductivity, and they, because are inert, they have very little tissue reaction. So a ceramic which is used in biomedical application is called bioceramic. Nothing like biomaterial, it's a bioceramic. How do we look at biomaterials or bioceramics? As we have seen earlier, that category. So ceramics which are inert are called bioinert. Alumina, Al2O3, zirconia, ZrO2 are the examples. Bioresourceable, which is which gets dissolved in the body with time. It is tricalcium phosphate. Bioactive, hydroxyapatite, bioactive glasses, glass ceramics, porous for tissue ingrowth, hydroxyapatite, coated with material, metal or otherwise. So this is how we classify the bioceramics. Now, what are the applications? They are used everywhere. Replacement of hip, knees, teeth, tendons, ligaments, periodontal diseases, maxillofacial reconstruction, that means face reconstruction for badly damaged face due to accidents, etc. Augmentation, nose surgery, when you must have heard about nose surgery, etc. So for increasing the length of the nose, decreasing the length of the nose, etc. Jaw bones, etc. Spinal injuries, replacement of that. Bone repair, where the bone has been chopped off because of tumor surgery, etc. Everywhere they are used. And they are also used as a coating or along with the coating. So pyrolytic carbon coatings are also used on ceramics to make it thromboresistant, means mm, less reaction to the uh, blood. So that is why when we talk about the prosthetic devices for heart valve, when we have to replace the heart valve, this ceramic coated with pyrolytic carbon is used, because it's the best material till date found to serve as an artificial heart valve than compared to any other category of biomaterial. We'll move to the properties, etc. So as I mentioned, types of bioceramics, the tissue attachment, how it does. So all different types of tissue reactions are listed here, from totally inert to where they're around allowing the material, human parts to grow through that. That means tissue growth, etc., is happening inside. All those four categories are there. You must have heard about plaster of Paris, which is used for external support to the bone damage, means fractures. That's also a category of bioceramic, which is used externally. In certain cases, it is also used for short duration inside as well. So this is how types of biomaterial, bioceramics are uh, categorized, and their different attachment mechanisms are listed here. Let's go to the main category. So among all bioceramics, the largest group of bioceramics are calcium phosphate group of bioceramics. Why? Because they are calcium based, and our bone is calcium based, and they are as close as possible among all category to the human bone. So because they are close to the human bone in all sense, therefore they are the most acceptable part. They do lack mechanical strength though, so they cannot be used as such in applications where you have shock loading. So they cannot be used as a raw form of bioceramic for, say, total hip replacement, because if hip is totally made of ceramic and we fall, then it will shatter into pieces rather than having a fracture here and there or otherwise. So we must do something to bring novelty to this category of material, and we'll see how it is done. So we'll uh, see some of those things for calcium phosphate. The one of the most important category of that is hydroxyapatite. Hydroxyapatite is nothing but it's a polycrystalline ceramic which is derived from natural sources. It is artificially made, as well as it is derived from animal sources, bone crushing, and then it can be derived. It is the upper side, the harder part of the bone is hydroxyapatite, or tooth enamel, which is there. It is very close to hydroxyapatite, hydroxyapatite. So this calcium phosphate are, as I said, biocompatible. That means they are totally accepted by the body, or bioresourceable. That means they are inside the body, and when the purpose is served, they are absorbed by the body, and extra material is excreted out from the body. So there is nothing better than this. If any material can be resourceable, That is what is the novelty we are looking for. And that novelty is still being challenged by the body and is being attended to by the material scientists even today. So let us see some of the various categories of calcium phosphate group of material. Long list is there. You don't have to go through it. Just a comparison I've seen that not one category, depending upon what is the chemical formula, they are being used at various forms for very small time use to long-term use. But most important is the last two, the hydroxyapatite HAP, which is Ca10PO4 to whole twice 6 OH twice, or Ca5 PO4 3 OH. So this is what is our bones external morphology, and that is why if this material can be used, then it will be the best possible solution for developing a material. The other one is tricalcium phosphate, that means Ca3PO4 whole twice. So this tricalcium phosphate has two categories, alpha and beta forms of crystal structure. So that is again going into detail. I'm not talking about it. What is more important is the last column, which is CAP ratio. So the CAP ratio should be high. As you can see, 1.67 is for hydroxyapatite. So the higher that CAP ratio, more stable it will be in the human body. And that is why the lower category 1.672 are quite acceptable to the body, because it doesn't dissolve without serving the purpose, and it is quite acceptable to other environments as well. This is the formula I've already said. So either you call it pentacalcium or decacalcium. Ca5 if I say, then PO4 3 OH without double, or Ca10 PO4 6 OH twice. Those of you who are from chemistry or who have more chemistry knowledge than other mechanical engineer, you know what is the difference between Ca10 PO4 6 OH twice and Ca5 PO4 OH. So it is stable between the pH values greater than 4.2 at temperatures 3.37 degrees. At lower than 4.2, it dissolves or it disintegrates into dicalcium phosphate, or what is called brushite, which is also stable, but this transition is not acceptable to the body in general. So we prefer not to use as such. That is why we do some changes. At higher temperature, there is a phase change, and it converts into tricalcium phosphate, beta form, and tetracalcium phosphate, etc. I'll show you some of my experiments where it has been shown that way. This is how it reacts when the contacts in human body. Human body has water, so when it comes in contact, this way, right side to left or left side to right, you can see dissolution happening and release of calcium ions taking place. So what is this material? Just to let you know, bone contains 60 to 70% of this material, whereas teeth contains more than 98%. And that's why this category is most acceptable or most native to human body compared to any other category. So novelty in this material is it is as close as natural material of the body. And then going to alumina, Al2O3, it is very inert, used in variety of applications in mechanical engineering discipline, as well as now being used in this. And I'm not going into detail. You all know it, that where it is used. They are used in spark plugs, tap washers, pump seals, electronic substrate on which we deposit the silicon devices, grinding media, abrasion resistance tiles, cutting tools, and what I'm talking about is bioceramic. Why bioceramic was first place used? Because it has very high compressive strength. It's quite brittle. It is ceramics. So ceramics are in general having high compressive strength than compared to tensile strength. It is very, very high, having high hardness, and that is why it is used as a abrasive media or grinding media. It is very stable up to a high temperature, to even chemicals, high thermal conductivity, resistant to thermal shocks, and high degree of refractiveness. That's why these refractory linings of the kiln or our furnaces are used using alumina. All these various forms are there, A, B, C, D, etc. I'm not going into detail. Just to let you know that, as I mentioned, that because it is inert, it is preferred in biomaterial applications as a biomaterial, because of its high corrosive resistance in dynamic environment also, which is the human body. Human body is one of the most dynamic systems. Every second something is happening, nanoseconds something is happening. So the material have to correspond to or conform to that dynamic environment, and this material serves very well. So because it is inert, it is treated by the body as a foreign material. But it is because inert, it doesn't do any harm to the body. Body just puts a membrane or a capsule around it and leaves it there. So that is the only drawback of this. A fibrous tissue is formed along the surface. So then what mechanical engineers can do, and they have done, they have come up with an idea of a composite hydroxyapatite bioceramic. Hydroxyapatite is the closest material the humankind has known, which is connected to the human system, and it has have some deficiencies. So in any case, we all know that composite materials are those category of material which combine the good properties of two or more categories of material. So obvious option is to bring novelty, use hydroxyapatite as a bulk, and use the other phase as whichever is required. So it can be ceramic hydroxyapatite composite. Metals also can be, fibrous also, layer. Many classes of composite hydroxyapatite can be used. What we are talking about is particle hydroxyapatite composite. If that is done, then we are going to reduce some of the discrepancies of ceramics, which is the brittle nature, which is explained by the Griffiths theory. In brittle material, what happens if there is a crack, pre-existing crack, which always happens because the fabrication of ceramics is done by a process called sintering, heating it. And sintering is a unique process because in normal material, when we heat, it expands. Whereas in sintering, which is done for ceramics, when you heat, it contracts. Whatever was the original raw size or green size, when you heat it, the size reduces, which you might have seen in case of bricks. ईंट भट्टे में जो ईंट बनती है, the green size is bigger and the cooked size is smaller. So that means they have contracted. This contraction brings in cracks. If it is not linear contraction or if it is not a controlled contraction, so whatever you try, there will be pores and there will be cracks, and that makes these ceramics brittle because little stresses, tensile stresses given to the material, these pre-existing cracks join, propagate, and then ultimately result in failure, which is explained by the Griffiths theory. So we have to avoid this in hydroxyapatite to bring something which can bring more brittle strength, more fracture strength in this brittle material. And there are various methods to plug this problem or improve the fracture strength of composites or ceramics. One of them is you inject make it particulate composite, so that the crack propagation requires more energy because it has to move around the crack and then join the next crack. And that is one way of this. All this is the theory, all of you know it. I'm just telling, same mechanical theory is used in this bioceramic fabrication as well. So we have variety of ceramics or metals which can be combined with hydroxyapatite. Most common one is alumina. So alumina is used as a second phase reinforcement in a brittle hydroxyapatite matrix, and then it is sintered and made into the product. Just moving on. Other composite forming second phase materials are also there, which are polymeric in nature. So again, matrix of hydroxyapatite with polymers like polyethylene, polymethacrylate, PMMA, polylactide co-glycolide, which is PLG. All these are very commonly used material in mechanical engineering. Just chemically, they're long names, but along with that, some metals like titanium, zirconium are also used, and most ones are Al2O3 and ZrO2 and bioclass. So if we combine, depending on what kind of strength we have to bring in, we can increase the brittleness, improve the brittleness by increasing the fracture strength, thereby bringing all good properties. Rest of the properties are anyway there. They are lightweight, they are inert, they are not having any adverse body reaction. They can be easily formed into the various intricate shapes, but the fracture strength was less. That can be improved by the second phase inclusion of particles. Even viscous can be added, even fibers can be added, but depending upon which kind of strength we are looking for, we can have that. So what happens? How do we know? What do we do to make materials like this? So here, the hydroxyapatite composite, when alumina, that is Al2O3, and hydroxyapatite are added, we go for characterization. We see what are these chemical structures, and it is done by X-ray diffraction method. We can identify what are the phases, which kind of material is present, and so on. So this is a pure, without sintering, without heating, whatever is seen here. And then the same material, when it is sintered to make a product, we see what changes have happened in the crystal structure, whether there is a diffusion, whether there is a formation of a new phase or new material, and so on. And that again is done by this. So you can see there is a peak at 33 or 35 degrees there, and that is the characteristic peak of HAP, and that the smaller peaks are of alumina. And this, those of you who are doing mechanical characterization using XRD, they know it. We don't have to go in detail. And then once they are heated, you can see there is a change. Here this is like this, now it is like this. So we have to identify with the intensity peaks, that which are these peaks and what they are corresponding to. So then what material has been formed, whether there is a decomposition of hydroxyapatite and form a chemical reaction taken place, and so on. So this is how it is characterized. And then then we characterize for hydroxyapatite mechanical strength. We see the internal structures using the electron microscopy. We have to see how strong or how dense the structures are formed. And as you can see on the right hand side, there are some micropores which are being which is visible. These pores are the pores when it is subjected to tensile stresses, and they join together and make the material fail by brittle failure mechanism. And when we go for higher magnification, we can see these pores. These pores are left-hand side pores are not desirable because they are not big enough. They won't allow growth of tissue, etc., veins and nerves. Whereas the right-hand side, intentionally, it has been created like that, so that there are pores available. The size is good enough to allow at least a minute level of growth, and that will make the implant stronger and serve longer. So with this, we see what are the future directions in novel material. We have seen all this growth. It is still growing. So there is something which we can do in remodeling of the material, regeneration area of the material. That means naturally occurring biocompatible materials are used as scaffold. Some of the material which is available in the nature, chitosan, collagen, They're used for wound healing and tissue regeneration. You must have heard that now material are coming, you just put it on the wound and then wound heals. So this is one area of novelty which is coming up in biomaterials. Then these materials, why they are novel? Because they mimic the extracellular matrix. Whatever is the skin, below skin area, the tissue, these material, they are so close that the body recognizes them as their own. They mimic the body, and that is why they help in wound regeneration. Then other category of materials is what we call it smart material or intelligent material, the material that can provide specific bioactive signals to the to control the biological environment around them during the process of material integration and wound healing. They release either chemicals or electrical signals, and that helps the body to heal it. Material that can respond to changes in the environment, such as the moment pH value changes, then these material behave a particular way, or they give a particular work to the body only when enzyme is secreted. And you know many such examples. I don't have to go, but it is coming up. It's still working area. Then collagen polymer combination, which I was talking about just before, that they are composites. They work as a conduit for regeneration of peripheral nerves. So when nerve systems get damaged, spinal spinal system gets damaged, these collagen polymer conduits are injected there, through which this nervous system regrows. So these are some of the novelties which are being worked on. Still work is on, but currently they are in development and use. One of the most important area which has been brought in recent times is the novelty which has been brought in the drug discovery and drug release in the body. That means earlier we have to take a capsule or an injection or a tablet. It goes to the body, it gets dissolved immediately. Capsules, some of the capsules, they get dissolved slightly slower, but once it opens up, it releases whatever was there inside the capsule. Injection, it just goes to the nervous system the moment it is injected. What is being worked by material scientists is a controlled or sustained drug release system. That means it allows the delivery of a specific drug at a programmed rate that leads to the drug delivery for a long period of time by adjusting to the degradation speed of the carrier. So whatever is the carrier material, the bulk material, its degradation rate is such control that it allows the release of that material at a particular release rate only. So if you inject such a material, say for example, what they are working is for controlling the blood sugar. So it is injected, it is lying in the bloodstream. The moment sugar level goes, this material behaves in a different way, starts releasing the medicine, and then the body responds to that and the sugar level is brought in. Same is the case of BP medicines. So it is there in the body, you don't have to eat it. The moment BP blood pressure goes up, pulse goes up, this changes its release rate and releases the medicine, and otherwise it is lying there, releasing slowly, controlling the blood sugar or blood pressure across without you knowing it, that what is happening inside. So this is called the novel drug release materials, which are adjusting to diffusion rates, adjusting to the degradation rate, adjusting to the what is called the reaction rate, etc. And they are generally put along with the insoluble polymer matrix or a shell. So the main body is not going to be released. It will not dissolve. It will remain there for 10 years, 15 years. And from there, it will release slowly the main material, which has to be released at a particular rate. There are coming up smart implants now. These implants, they are injected to serve the main purpose. So if hip replacement has been done, the material which is there is not only working as artificial hip or artificial heart or artificial knee, but also giving signals from there and letting the doctors know what is happening. For example, artificial valves, heart valves, or artificial kidney, they are inside and they are letting the doctors know and giving the signals from there, which can be used to control further if required. These are called smart implants. Material is same as what we have said, but it has certain more novelties which is required to be functioning, where they are giving they are having the diagnostic capability. They can let you know that this is what is happening inside the body. And they have sensors, electronic sensors. They have signal conditioning electronic devices and some telemetric devices. That means they are transmitting signals in a small amount, which can be picked up by external device and then transmitted to the doctor or patient's relatives. These are some of the novelties which has been brought in or which is being worked in biomaterials. With that, we come to the end. I hope I have not exceeded the time. It is nearly 60 minutes now, and
Yes.
we are going to the quiz. Can I request the organizers to permit me to go for the quiz, or you want any questions and then we go for the quiz?
Uh, Sir, we can start the quiz.
Okay.
Yes.
So, can now you can unmute to give the answer if you want, or if your organizers have created this, I had shared this quiz. If they have created this quiz, you can answer on that. I don't know what is the system there. I'm just showing it. Can I know the answer? Which of the three materials categories listed below is a broader category of which the other two belong to? Functional material, novel material, smart material. Which is this parent and which are the children?
Functional materials are the parent.
So
Novel are
the answer is
the
the functional material is at the top, and its subcategories or its examples are novel materials and smart materials.
yes, sir.
So answer is A, B, or C. Let us say like that.
A.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. I won't tell whether it is correct or not, but anyone else try out? Don't worry, don't hesitate. All of us are teachers. We want our
Sir,
students to give answer irrespective whether it's correct or
sir,
not.
B is the answer.
B is the answer. Thank you. Anyone else?
Novel materials, B.
Okay, thank you. One more answer and then I will give you the correct answer. Okay, no worries. So the correct answer is novel materials. The functional material, biomimetic material, smart material, all are novel materials. So the novel is the broader category under which all these you can talk about smart material, you can talk about functional material. There are material which are biomimetic, inspired from nature, biomaterial, bio origin, etc. Everything will come under this. Second question is, biomaterials are, oh, sorry. Anyway, not a worry, not a worry. Uh, let the answer be known. Uh, Biomaterials are broadly classified into following number of classes. I've already given the answer here. Forgot to remove this. So 3, 4, and 2. Answer is written 3. The biomaterials are either bioinert, bioresorbable, or bioactive. Bioinert means they just go sit there, no reactions with the body tissues and blood, etc. Bioresourceable means they are enjoying the body environment and body is also accepting them and doing something, but still they are foreign bodies. And the bioactive, they are doing something, they are allowing. So bioresourceable is getting dissolved and excreted out. Bioactive is there, it may get dissolved, may not, but it is allowing the tissue growth through it. Whereas bioresourceable may not allow the tissue in growth that much as bioactive. So these are three categories which I had already explained. Which of the alloying elements present in largest percentage among all alloying elements of 316L stainless steel? I had emphasized
Chromium.
that while I was presenting.
It's
Molybdenum,
chromium.
nickel, or chromium?
Chromium.
Chromium. Good answer. I don't know whether it is correct or not. Let us see from one or two more. I think all of others are agreeing with you or disagreeing. So in that case, only the silence is there. So let us agree to you also and say that it is chromium. Thank you for correct answer. Hydroxyapatite belongs to the family of hydrocarbons, calcium phosphates, hydrochlorides. Hydroxyapatite HAP belongs to the family of hydrocarbons, calcium phosphates, or hydrochlorides. No answers?
Calcium phosphate.
Calcium phosphates. Thank you for the answer. I don't know whether it is correct or not. Let me hear one more. If another person says, then I might get a hint that it is correct or not. Okay, no worries. So let's see the answer. Calcium phosphates, as I said, Ca10 I had shown, PO4 twice 6, OH twice. So it's the calcium phosphate family. This I've already told it. So chemical formula for hydroxyapatite is Ca10 PO4 6 OH twice, Ca3 PO4 twice, CH PO4 dot 2 twice H2O. So the first one is the answer, which I have already given just before this. Either you call it Ca5 PO4 3 OH or Ca10 PO4 6 OH twice. Basically, it is pentacalcium phosphate. So the answer is this, and that brings to the end of the presentation. Over to the organizers. If you have any questions.
If anyone is having any query, he or she may ask now.
Sir, I have a question, few questions actually. Whatever bioactive material that you have said, that is hydroxyapatite.
Can others please mute so that I can hear? There is another sound coming from some other attendee.
Hello.
Okay. Yes, please, ma'am.
Sir, hydroxyapatite ceramic, bioceramic that you have said, is it a bioactive material or bio-inert type of material?
Hydroxyapatite is both bioresourceable and bioactive, depending upon like whether it is heated while sintering. If we are sintering at higher temperature, then it is bioresourceable. If we are sintering at a lower temperature, then it is bioactive.
Bioactive. Okay. Sir, another question is that if we have to do the additive manufacturing for the same material, can we go for it? Because right now, whatever we have talking, it is about the powder metallurgy, sintering
Correct,
process
correct.
only.
Actually, if you go further deeper in powder metallurgy, please understand that the sintering which is used for ceramic is not the sintering which is used for metals. So metals are, when we use say powder metallurgy, it is primarily or broadly it is for metals, and it's composites, particulate composites. So to give you answer, the only and only way with which you can create strength and give its form which can be injected in the body is the sintering. So it is called thermal sintering.
Okay.
Or it can be used as a coating on a metal surface or a polymer surface. So there, the other method is that we go for chemical vapor deposition or physical vapor deposition techniques or ion implantation, all those film coating techniques we can use for manufacturing.
Okay, but I'm thinking the same material for the additive manufacturing. If I have to go for the complex geometries, then
Correct.
all these methods are not feasible that much.
So I was just trying not carefully not to use the powder metallurgy or additive. I'm saying that it is a simple process of sintering where you use. If you don't do that, then what will happen? Some of the chemical transformations which is required is not going to take place. There is an interaction required between alumina and hydroxyapatite to phase change and then form calcium or aluminate, which will not take place by additive manufacturing.
Okay, so last question. Can we do the reinforcement of this hydroxyapatite with a non-metal as a
Yes.
matrix?
Yes. See, you have to go to the basic of composites. Any two combinations can be used. There's nothing stopping us. But when those two combinations are used, we have to look at the structural integrity of those two components which are put together. One, two, their relative interaction with each other, and the third one, the purpose for which they are being combined together, is it being served or not? So suppose you are injecting if you're using the second phase inclusion, a metal, say for example titanium, you can use it. But we know the fundamental theory and we have to understand why titanium or aluminum has to be used and why not alumina to be used. As we said, when the metals are there, it will have some negative impact on the implant material, and it is going to be implanted. So if that metal is not increasing most of the properties, and by putting up another ceramic, bioceramic, the material serves better, you go. But technically or theoretically, any combination of materials can be used.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So
And
any
yes,
other question, please?
anyone else?
Yes, miss.
Okay.
We can hear you. Please go
So,
ahead.
sir, I think no queries no queries there. So, sir, thank you so much for your time and such an informative session.
Thank you,
So,
ma'am.
sir, on behalf of ME department and all the participants, I, Dr. Suman Gotwal, propose a vote of thanks to our guest speaker, Professor Anupam Srivastava, who, despite her busy schedule, found time for us and gave such an informative talk on biomaterials from traditional to novel biomaterials. Sir, the novel biomaterials that which you discussed during your session has a vast, with their vast applications are very helpful and of great research importance. And so we are very grateful to have you with us during this session, and we will be honored to have you in future also.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
It's my pleasure and honor as well. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
So,
So
can I take leave now?